Hey y'all, July 13th, 2024 at Twin Oaks Family Farm in rural southeast Ohio, USA, and got a fun show and tell and share Saturday on the farm for you here. We are going to go down, take a look at the meat birds that we have in production. Hey y'all, it's Melissa. So glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to kind of make a loop and make our way back to the front porch in this video today. Going to tell you about some books that I'm reading and enjoying, some YouTube channels want to recommend you check out if you haven't, and take a look at the meat birds, take a look at some plants. If you want to bring butterflies to your yard through some plantings of some florals, I got a couple plants I want to share with you. I would recommend these in landscaping for attracting butterflies, but one of them is kind of controversial on that note, so I'll share that with you. I'll tell you why it's controversial too. But gonna go down here and look at the meat birds first. Oh, and the other thing gonna do in this one, this Saturday show and tell and share, I had to go out to the dollar store, the most local dollar store for us, and gonna show you some of my favorite picks at the dollar store. And also had a package waiting at the post office that's been there throughout this week, and this was the first chance I had to go get it. And it's a Norwex order, and I've told y'all a little bit about Norwex and the products that they offer. Cleaning solutions for the home and personal care solutions for the members of your household. And so we use Norwex products. I actually am a Norwex sales consultant, I guess is the right word. But other people can order Norwex through me, through my official website that you can find online. But we also use it in the household. So we got a box of a household order, and I picked it up today. So I want to show you what my household gets when we order Norwex from my Norwex website. So at any rate, let's take a look at the birds, okay? So we're here at the meat bird production barn. They are like kind of taking it easy. They've been up and rested. Morning chores were done about 6 a.m. and at that point it was getting the doorways opened up for them, making sure that the fans are on if needed, and this morning they were making sure that the feeders have feed in them. So like there's a group of birds back there eating, making sure that the waters were all filled up. So the trays were cleaned and the waters were filled up. And so basically that's what happened. So actually while we're here, it takes me a little bit of doing while I'm holding the camera, but I'm going to walk around to the back of the building. See how there's a no man's land right there? Well, the direct bright sun comes in that side of the building up until probably about 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So right now we're getting a bunch of direct sun right there. So they don't want to be in the direct sun. And so I always find that very interesting because you know, this is one way to raise birds in a confined setting. Another way to raise these meat chickens that is popular, that a lot of people really like and people do utilize, is a pasture poultry setting. And sometimes to do that, they do have a permanent pasture situation, and then the birds like can go into a building like this at night. But other times, to accomplish pastured poultry production, people have portable units that they call chicken tractors that protects the chickens from predator risk, and actually is set up to protect the chickens from that direct kind of sunlight. So I do think birds would go back there and use those feeders and waters if that direct sunlight wasn't coming in. So let's just do that. Let's just take a walk around that side. Go ahead and close that up, and then we'll come back to this other side, see if it makes any kind of difference. So this is how we prop them open. So, you know, it's just two doors, and we have them open. We have a half post leaned back against them. So I'm letting this one close. So that bright sunlight basically, you know, creates a no man's land, no bird's land right there, because for one thing, it ramps the temperature up right there. and they don't want that. So let's see, they are, I think we're at 31 days old. So yeah, so this flock, 426 birds. Okay, so now I gotta try to get it shut. 426 birds, and they are about 31 days old. Just a moment, y'all. So we just, old school, old fashioned right there. So 426 birds, about 31 days old, about 9 more days to go, I think. Today's July 13th. They go to processor on July 22nd. So now, you know, we're at what we would call the finished stage of production. So kind of the short story on that is that with meat chickens, you have basically a start phase, a grow phase, and a finish phase. Not everybody buys into that perspective on the meat birds, like having ages and stages of development, and that's okay. That's okay if you don't want to look at it from that point of reference. But we do have a tendency to see that in the development, a start, a grow, and a finish, and it's somewhat distinct. And in the start phase, you know, they're little chicks that are the size of a chicken egg. Because, okay, and that's not fighting. Let me share this with you all. That's not fighting, okay? That was 2 birds that got triggered to some activity, you know, because there's moving air there from a fan. And when they do that, they have this spurt of energy. And if there's another bird in their sights, like they'll run at each other and posture at each other. And with these meat chickens, then that's where it ends. They're done. And then they just turn around and move on, usually. Now, that holds true till about 6 weeks of age. And then we start to see a little bit of a difference in their asserting themselves, especially with the males. So, you know, that's kind of a developmental milestone, I would say, for them as far as like maturity wise. But after that, like after 6 weeks, you might see, especially some of these Cornish rock cross roosters, posture at each other and then proceed to fight. And you might come across, occasionally you might come across a few individual roosters that really want to rule the roost and will pick at other roosters and kind of try to vie for dominance. But I'm telling you, that generally doesn't happen until after 6 weeks of age. And so therefore, in a production system that really prioritizes having the birds butchered and processed no later than 6 weeks of age, we really don't see that aggressive dominance behavior from the roosters in the flocks if we prioritize having them butchered at the appropriate time by 6 weeks of age. But 9 times out of 10, like I've had people say to me, what's up with my Cornish rock cross meat chickens? They're fighting with each other. And I'll say, are they older than 6 weeks of age? And usually yes, because you almost never see that fighting behavior before that. And that fighting behavior isn't like anybody's encouraging chicken fighting. It's just like those birds are maturing and they're starting to vie for dominance. They're starting to vie for pecking order, okay? And so that really ties right back into how I was telling you, we really observe distinct start, grow, and finish stages in Cornish rock cross meat chickens. So I'm okay with it if somebody says to me, I don't buy into that. I don't buy into the start, grow, and finish stages. But, you know, honestly, I don't know that I did at first either. 2,500 birds ago, or however many birds we've raised. We're like in our 5th year of raising chickens, and I know we raised 1,200 some last year, and I know we raised a lot the year before that. So, you know, we've probably raised at least 2,000 birds, and I know from having observed them in all these different flocks and all these different birds that there is a distinction as they move through development and as we take them from hatch to harvest. we see distinct differences that delineate those 3 phases of growth. Now look, this is interesting, and this is why I wanted to take time to shut that door while we're doing Show and Tell and Share Saturday and while y'all are here with me. There were no birds over there. They didn't want to go over there because the direct sunlight was beating in. Look now, they're working their way over there. So when we had that happening, and that's one of the reasons we monitor this building throughout the day, and we like these big doorways because they allow all kinds of ventilation and airflow when we can get all these doors open, or at least 2 or 3 of them open simultaneously. But then we watch, and if we get a bunch of sunlight beating in one spot and no birds want to go there, we close that side up, because that just eats up floor space and discourages the birds from spreading out on the floor space. And so instead, if we can kind of control in that sunlight and make it indirect instead of direct, then the birds will gradually fill out and use that floor space more evenly throughout the pen, okay? But 426 of them, and honestly, to me, they don't look crowded. I don't know. If they look crowded to you, feel free to shout that out. I prefer you shout it out in the comments respectfully, in a kind way, but they don't look crowded to me. There's still floor space, and we only have about 9 days to go. So I'm good with what we would refer to as stocking density, and I don't have the number figured up on it, like how much square foot per bird or whatever right at the moment. I can try to run some numbers this week and include that in videos the week of July 15th, but I can tell you just by looking, and you can see by looking, these birds have more floor space to go. So they have more room to grow into. So they're going to be in good shape even for 9 more days. And I'm real happy with the size of them. And during this week, July 15th, we'll talk about feathering on these birds. Okay, we'll talk about feathering. We'll talk about why, like the one in the center of the picture there is sparsely feathered, and then some of these other ones are better feathered in. But we'll talk about especially why some of them are sparsely feathered. And there's a good example too. In underbelly, there's no feathering there. Why is that? Well, we'll talk about that. But let me assure you in the meantime that there wasn't like feathers broken off there, and the feathers haven't been rubbed off there. That's not caused by friction against the bedding. That's not caused by the bedding not being maintained. The bedding is in good condition. There weren't feathers there that have been rubbed off, and there weren't feathers there that have been broken off. It just didn't grow feathering. Okay, so I'll explain that when we get into that topic, and we're going to do that July 15th, during the week of July 15th. So anyway, here they are. We raise them start to finish. You might call it a bird barn. You could call it a food factory. Both descriptions would be true. When it doesn't have birds in it, we do repurpose it and use it for other things. We have two big doors on the west side of it, so we can actually pull vehicles in here and use it for basically additional garage space when we don't have birds in it. And we don't aim to have birds in it 52 weeks of the year, because we don't want to start birds in cold weather, because our barn basically matches the outdoor temperature. So we need to get the temperatures, working in our favor and in a range where it's not incredibly difficult to warm the space up. We use those heat lamps there on the far side of the building. We can put them anywhere in the building. They're not in use now. We're not going to need them now. We might need them when we move the next flock in, like overnight for that flock for 3 weeks or so. But we don't need those now, and we're not going to need them. We're using box fans now. So now the job is keep these birds comfortable in terms of targeted cooling, targeted airflow, keep them cooled down to comfortable, because at this age, about 75 degrees Fahrenheit is probably what they want to be. It's definitely in the low 80s Fahrenheit right now. So, okay. So we're going to move on from the bird barn. The only other thing to finish up with there, I would say, that I thought I might mention, we started this flock with all the feed on site that we intended to use start to finish, because we have an amount, like each bird should eat 10 pounds start to finish. So, you know, then we just use that. We'll walk around. Let's walk around the other way. So then we just use that amount, 10 pounds per bird, multiply it out times the number of birds, basically, and get the amount of feed we want. We're going to feed that out in 5 or 6 weeks, depending on the production schedule for that flock. This flock is going to 41 days. We'll withdraw feed on day 40, so we're only feeding to day 40. So we bought 80 bags of feed, and so 40 bags are on a skid or a pallet, so we bought 2 pallets of feed. I don't get anything for telling you what we feed. I just like to tell you so you know. We feed Kalmbach, 22% protein value, start to finish meat bird. So it's basically considered a starter, okay? So sometimes people want to change that protein value, bump it down. So with meat birds, production birds, you could do that. You could go to a grower feed, which would be like a 19% protein. We know we prefer the shortened timetable, which is really the appropriate timetable for Cornish rock cross meat chickens. If you want to have a discussion about that in comments, we can do that. Let's just do it in a kind way and politely. But we believe the appropriate timetable for raising Cornish rock cross meat chickens is 6 weeks, but 5 to 6 weeks. But if you're going to try to raise them longer, you're probably not going to use the starter feed the entire time. So you could drop them down to a grower feed, which would be about a 19% protein. But we keep them on the 22%, and they're on full feed 24/7, start day 1 to whatever day finishes. And that's what we do. But we like Kalmbach, and we like the Kalmbach 22% meat bird start to finish. We're going to keep feeding it. We buy it, but we're gonna keep feeding it because it does what we need it to do. What we like about it is we know it's a complete feed, complete nutrition. We know it's consistent. Whether I open up the first bag on the skid, the 20th bag on the skid, the 39th bag on the skid, it's, you know, consistent nutritional quality for the birds. And so we bought 2 skids for this group, 80 bags. We have fed 60 bags to about 420 birds in 30 days, okay? So about, let's say, 10 days to go for the last 20 bags of feed. So really, you know, that puts them at, they're allowed about 2 bags of feed a day, but they're eating, you know, 2 to 3 bags of feed a day. So we're gonna make it. Wanted to show you this side of the building. So in between that shed run there is a Georgia buggy. That's kind of a concrete job tool, implement or machinery for helping move wet concrete around on a job site. But so you can see the birds